So, Black Mirror Season 5 came out yesterday, and I had the time to finish it all in one go. Time to do some rapid-fire reviews. Season 5 has 3 new episodes with 3 new stories, each having their own different flavors and themes.
Oh my god! Get this fucking cable out of my ass!
I will be reviewing each episode separately and giving them individual ratings, as well as a final score. Spoilers ahead, and also some NSFW warnings for the first episode. Episode 1, Striking Vipers. This episode boils down to your two homies, Danny and Carl, figuring out whether they're gay or not because they fucked each other in an extremely realistic VR Street Fighter. Now, I'm generally annoyed when people compare this game to Mortal Kombat in the press. I mean, just look at the fucking UI, it's clearly Street Fighter. Carl has a girl avatar and Danny has a guy avatar, and they fuck each other in the video game. Which,
He's kinda gay.
In all seriousness, I do like this episode for how it takes an unexpected turn to explore the character's sexuality and fantasies, but started off as just a mundane story about friends reuniting with each other. And that lasts for the first 15 minutes. And I do have to admit, I became tired of that plot or that little setup for the first 15 minutes. They'd set up Danny's marriage and Carl's love life. I didn't think anything was gonna happen. The only thing that kept me going and watching this episode was just to see how they were going to put the Street Fighter knockoff into the story. And, well, they did, and they did it with a twist. A twist I did not expect was going to happen until it did. Okay, so I just checked, and it seems that Charlie Brooker, the writer and creator of the show, was actually inspired by Tekken for this, not Street Fighter. But I mean, they're basically the same thing, right? Right? For me, I thought the pacing of the story felt right for this episode, especially with all the time jumps that happened, and it really sets up for the characters reuniting, processing, and dealing with what they've done, and it also gave us this very special scene.
Nothing matches it, does it? I tried replacing it, man. I tried everything. I've gone in there as God players, girl players, multiplayer gangbangs, you name it. You know, I even fucked Tundra, the polar bear character. I fucked a polar bear. And I still couldn't get you out of my mind.
This episode gets a 7 out of 10. Side note, there is a setup in this episode with the kitchen knife.
Hazard warning.
You gotta put the knives in, sharp edge down.
I know.
That just kind of never pays off, and that just annoyed the shit out of me after the episode ended, because I don't understand why they would put a fucking knife in the fucking thing and explain how the dishwasher works if they're not going to put that to use. Okay, whatever. Moving on. Episode 2, Smithereens. This episode boils down to an elaborate extortion to talk to a celebrity and have him pretend to be a therapist for 5 minutes.
Tell me what it is that you want.
I just told you. I want you to listen to me. Just fucking listen to me.
I'm listening.
I especially love this episode for its execution of the underlying main plot. The episode doesn't just immediately reveal the true intentions of Chris, the cab driver or kidnapper, but slowly does it over time through investigation from the police and from Smithereen, the tech company. This episode also plays on the audience's expectations by having them think that Chris is a psychopath during the first act through visual cues, but then quickly subverts it, and they did it masterfully, similar to Shut Up and Dance. Opposite to Shut Up and Dance, this episode makes the audience empathize with the main character by the final act when his intentions are revealed as a grieving person looking for someone to listen to his story. Although the major twist was somewhat predictable and somewhat cliched, the transformation of the audience's relationship between the main character, who we thought was an antagonist, truly struck me. Andrew Scott's performance as the main character truly drove this episode to the best of its ability. Although the story became a little bit light because there wasn't so much content to it, watching Andrew Scott play this character truly made him feel alive and as someone we could relate to as a person.
Fuck! Children! The whole Smithereen building's a box full of fucking children getting their fingers everywhere. Wiping your shit! Your fucking shit up everybody's phone! Everywhere you look, people are hooked on the things! It's like chain smoking! Did you make a lot of cash out of that, did you? And you lot are hooked on them as well! Every single person that comes out of that building's like, people don't even look up anymore. The sky could turn fucking purple and you cunts wouldn't notice for a month. You didn't look up, and look where that got you. Sitting in the back like that!
This episode also provokes the audience to reflect upon social media's power and status as a whole. The power of social media was shown when Smithereens can obtain information faster than a police investigation ever could through the invasion of privacy. And social media's status is shown to have evolved negatively when Billy Bauer goes on his rant about the platform.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. Our whole platform, I swear to God, it was one thing when I started it, and then it just became this whole other fucking thing.
Genuinely, I would have loved to see more of Billy Bauer's point of view on the empire he has created, but we only get such a tiny glimpse of that rant before Chris cuts him off.
It's supposed to be for 10 days, after day 2.
I decided. Fuck it.
Hey.
I quit Smithereens. That's it. I'm out.
Hey, shut up.
No, wait.
Shut up. I don't give a fuck what you do now.
The ending of this episode is particularly impactful. It's one of the rare endings where the audience can decide their own ending, whether Chris or Jaden gets shot in this case. Regardless of who dies though, the reactions shown in the epilogue works for either, and later on, showing how the effect just starts to dampen as people further away from the action finds out, just further reinforces that. This shows the audience that at the end of the day it doesn't matter what happened, as nothing has changed and nothing will. It's a reflection of the tragic truth of our society. But this is just one of many interpretations to the episode's ending, and its open-ended ending just makes this one of the best in the season. This episode gets a 9 out of 10. Lastly, episode 3, Rachel, Jack, and Ashley 2. This episode boils down to what would happen if you had a personal clone of a celebrity you love in the form of a robot that is hella woke. This was the episode that dealt more with technology this season, but had a significantly weaker plot. While the technologies on screen in this episode were quite interesting, the episode decides to focus more on stardom and only uses technologies as a plot device to move the story along, rather than using the technology to create the main conflict. By doing this, they sharpen the Ashley O story arc, but completely nullify the Ashley 2 arc from having any meaning on its own. The unexplained inner workings of Ashley 2 feels unexplored, and becomes a nuisance when the audience is expected to believe that two teens would simply be able to change the source code of a robot by plugging it in like an iPhone and pressing delete. This episode definitely has more of a teen film genre going for it, but it didn't necessarily mean the story should have conformed to that genre. The fact that it did made this episode weaker than the others. But ignoring its flaws, this episode does deliver a satisfying story of a journey to rebellion, but it could have been more fleshed out, especially if Catherine, Ashley O's manager, had motivations beyond money, which would make her character more nuanced and more human rather than the cartoon villain that we see. This episode does spark a good conversation on the price of being famous and the state of the music industry. And this hits especially close to reality with Avicii's new album Tim being released 1 year after his death with new tracks produced by his friends, or holographic performances from dead artists like Prince and Amy Winehouse. This poses a great question of whether the music industry has gone too far. This episode gets a 6 out of 10. I found the season to have been pretty good. I liked how they went back to their roots and focused more on the human aspects of the show, but some parts of the internet and critics think differently. Some people thought it was alright, some people didn't think it was very twisty, some just thought it was complete trash. And I can't argue with that. Episode 3 was bad, and it did not fulfill the potential, leading to such an underwhelming episode with a great cast and great acting from Miley Cyrus. The cast and acting, though, does apply to all episodes. It's the things that kept these episodes cohesive and engaging and believable to the audience. Having tie-ins into other episodes by mentioning them or playing clips on them also help fans like myself to engage into these episodes and spot any readable text in the show for any kind of Easter eggs. It's understandable that this time around the episode count has reverted to the original number of 3, given all the work that was done on Bandersnatch, the interactive movie which I also did a review on, as opposed to waiting longer for a new season. But overall, Season 5 is pretty solid, delivering stories and social commentaries that provoke conversations, like all good Black Mirror episodes do. This season gets an 8 out of 10. If you have some time to kill, I recommend you take the time to read the interviews with creator Charlie Brooker and executive producer Annabelle Jones on Entertainment Weekly's website on all the episodes of Season 5. These interviews ask burning questions from each of the 3 episodes and gives a great insight as to how each episode came to be, and links are in the description if you want to check them out. I also want to take this time to promote my Discord server. If you aren't in it already, the link is in the description below. You can easily join it with a click of a button, or type out whatever's on the screen right now into the Discord app. So head on over if you want to chill with me or the tons of other people that are on there as well. Well, that's it for today, guys. See you later.